Hi, it's Kerry Lutz and Ty Andros. It is May 24th, 2012. We're doing the weekly wrap on Thursday because of the approaching holiday, and Ty's on the phone with us now. Hey, Ty, how are you?
Good. How are you today, sir?
We're doing good. We're doing good. Hopefully it's going to clear up in New York in time for the holiday weekend, although I have my doubts. But nonetheless, we're here for we've wrapped up another week, just about, and a lot more of the same, isn't it?
Well, nothing changes. This is the same story that's been going on for, years. The story just gets worse and worse. We're in a currency and financial system extinction event ultimately. But, the powers that be and the radical socialists that are in charge virtually throughout the developed world are just have turned inwards. They're consuming their private sectors and growing the government because that's the only thing they know how to grow.
Yeah, and no matter what happens, in good times or bad, or boom times or bust, the government gets fed, the government expands to the detriment of everyone else, to the detriment of you, to the detriment of me, to the detriment of our standards of living and our wealth, right?
It's it's a one-way ride to the poorhouse, and the public is paying.
Yeah, and yet the public doesn't get it, do they?
They don't. Okay, it's just because they've been dumbed down. They don't know that the way that these people are using the words. As Clinton said, what is the meaning of is? And the meaning of, when you and I talk about growth, we think of a growing private sector and new businesses and that sort of thing. And when they talk about growth, they're talking about expanding government.
Yeah, that reminds me, Ty, the whole linguistic abuse, the perversion and distortion of the language kind of came to the fore during Clinton's era when it no longer became spending on education. It became an investment. We were investing in education. And if that is an investment in the future and in society, then no wonder we're all bankrupt because that investment paid horrible returns, right?
I don't know of any government investment that's yielded returns. Can't think of one. They've invested in education, and our education system has completely failed. They've created a bunch of useful idiots, and you think of the Department of Energy, and we're more dependent on oil forever, and they've virtually outlawed clean, affordable, conventional energy. You think about the medical field where things are running out of control, but the government introduced Medicare and Medicaid and cost shifting to the private sector, and or Dodd-Frank. It's just one horror story after the other. Why government has failed on all these other projects, and somehow they're going to start yielding positive results in the future is kind of an oxymoron, isn't it?
Oh, well, it reminds me of Dr. Johnson when he was talking about second marriages with his trusty scribe Boswell, and he said second marriages were the triumph of hope over experience and expecting the government to get something right after they failed so miserably in every other undertaking is certainly the triumph of hope over experience, or the triumph of fantasy over reality.
Well, the two most dangerous words you can hear out of politicians' mouth is hope and fairness.
I could think of some others. And help us on the way, man. You better go dig a hole, get into your bunker, because if the government's out to help you, then your problems are about to get a whole lot worse. And
well, just like Ronald Reagan said, the 9 most frightening words you can have is I'm here from the government, and I'm here to help you.
Yeah, and they're speaking of governments helping. So we have Greece. They're engaged in a game of chicken, believing that if that they're the tail wagging the dog, and that if they leave the euro will collapse, leaving Europe in literally ruins. So they're trying the old tried and true blackmail, which has worked so well for them in the past. Is it going to work this time?
I don't think so. I think they've massively miscalculated, and that when it really comes down to it, the European Union will say arrivederci.
You think they have the guts to do that, or do you think it's just they'll have no other choice finally?
Well, you never know what those socialists in Brussels are going to do. I mean, these people are utterly incompetent, and you have to understand that this is a political game. There is nothing practical, or, they're not trying to solve any problems. They're just trying to figure out how to work it for the most political advantage. That's their only goal.
Yeah, and in the long run, this just makes the problem worse, because the longer you put off a problem, it's just like Steve Jobs not addressing that shadow on the X-ray, and it eventually did him in, and it's eventually going to do in the entire European Union, and then it's going to be dominoes all over the world. And what is the sense of this, to have a political solution that never solves anything? It's incredibly frustrating, and it makes one despair.
Well, I don't think they've thought it through. They just are more more interested in, maintaining power and having, opportunities to extract wealth from the private sector. It has nothing to do with anything other than that.
Yeah. So we just wait for the collapse, basically. Is that it?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. We're just waiting for the collapse and waiting for the public to wake up. That's what's going to happen, and they can deny the money printing, but after the fifth or sixth iteration of it, someone's going to figure out that they'll print money forever.
Uh-huh.
And that's when it'll all happen. We you have some very informative listeners.
Mm-hmm.
So they've really, they're the kind of the vanguard.
Yeah.
But I, would have to say that most of your listeners, the vast majority of the people in their lives look at them, stare them blankly in the face when they talk about these issues. And they just believe it's a slowdown and it's going to recover just like it has in the past. And, they're going to go on their merry ways while the American people are like a frog sitting in water that's slowly boiling.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you mention the people, if you're listening to the show, because I was at the Hard Assets New York Investment Conference last week, and about 30 people came up to me, somewhere between 20 to 30, don't know the exact number, and said, "Hey, we listen to you all the time." And these were people that totally got it. They understood exactly the games that are being played on you, what the government's doing to basically take your wealth away. And they weren't sitting around waiting for it to happen. They weren't those frogs, sitting there as the water temperature got higher and higher and eventually being boiled to death. So I think there's a growing number of people who are getting this and understanding that things aren't getting better. And if you do think that things are getting better, look at the food stamp recipients. The number is increasing. Look at the actual labor force participation rate. That number is decreasing. Look at the number of people collecting disability. Numbers going up, which takes them off the unemployment rolls.
Look at the amount of personal income taxes that are being paid, which hasn't hardly increased at all since 2008.
It's down 40%, I think, is the number, right?
I'm not familiar with it. I just watch Charles Biederman a lot, and he's done a lot of good work on trim tabs on tax flows, and there's no evidence of any kind of recovery in these in the numbers that he's looking at.
Yeah, the numbers are decreasing, which is why that 43 cents of every dollar that the federal government spends is borrowed, and most of what is so-called borrowed is printed out of thin air, and it just goes on and on and on, and you know that things are not improving. They're getting worse. The economy's continuing to contract, and eventually somebody's going to have to face the ugly truth, and we're going to have to totally reform the system or face, like you say, perhaps an economic extinction event that there's really no way to stop.
Actually, it's a financial system and currency extinction event, but of course it'll take the economy with it.
Yeah, because if you don't have a monetary system, you don't have an economy. So that's the scary part. Anything else on the horizon here that we...
Well, like I said a week before last, we're just waiting for the announcements. And, the losses are mushrooming like a nuclear cloud. It's just, they've doubled in the last 2 weeks, but they're going to go up another 50% at least. They brought in BlackRock and some accounting firm to tell the world that they're telling the truth, which, just spells that they've been operating in insolvency with regulatory approval. Because I don't think BlackRock or the accounting firm is going to lie, but they may.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of crony capitalists out there. The whole ratings game out there, other than Egan-Jones, is a farce. And we've got Francois Hollande playing the same role that the guy in Greece is, and saying that we can eat cake. We can hire 60,000 people, but we'll borrow the money for it.
Yeah, good luck.
And we're going to raise the retirement age and borrow the money to pay the benefits. It's not coming from the private sector. It's just consume more than you produce over and over and over again. The French banking system's been on the ropes because of reckless lending throughout Europe, but the French real estate market really has held up quite well, but it too is rolling over.
Really?
And of course, it's 100% greater than its average over the last 100 years. So this is a black swan about to, although I wouldn't call it a black swan, it's completely expected.
Yeah.
And so that we've got a number of things that are unfolding. It's just a slow motion train wreck. And we have Mario Draghi, and he can deny it all he wants, but that's how they try to keep prices from running away. They deny it right up to the day they have to print it.
Funny how that works, isn't it?
Oh, it's a pretty predictable script, and it's one that's going to be used for a long time. And, the people don't understand that you can't print money, but you can print debt. And, of course, the Euro experiment is, they talk about Euro bonds and joint and several liability so that the richest people, the richest countries can pay for the poorest countries' poor policies. And, they already have Euro bonds, Kerry. They're called Euros.
Yeah.
And the Euros are nothing more than IOUs. But they're IOUs that has no tax base behind it and no army behind it. I defy anybody in the world that can show me a reserve currency that had those two descriptions.
Yeah, well, I think Jim Sinclair summed it up really well. If a dollar is an I owe you nothing, a euro is who owes you nothing. And
Yes.
That's something to chew over, because all currency, modern currency now, is simply debt-based. Each dollar, each unit brought into existence, borrowed into existence, and that's the way the system has been designed to function and has functioned for a while, but it looks like we're getting to the end of that game, and some may feel the sooner the better, but the transition is going to be perilous, and just hope we're all prepared for it. Anyway, Ty, tedbits.com, traderview.com, and if you want to hear this interview again or many of the others that I've done with Ty and other notable financial luminaries, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Ty, we'll talk to you next week. Yeah.
That's fine. I want to note that I'm going to be doing a special series on crony capitalism with Gordon T. Long. And but I wish everybody out there the best, and have a great happy holidays, and I'm sure the mayhem is just beginning.
On that positive note, Ty, we will talk to you next week. Be well. Enjoy the holiday.
I love you all.
Hey, you take care.